Welcome back to another explainer right here on the For the Wise podcast. You know, if you're looking to turn life's friction into actionable wisdom, you are exactly where you need to be. Actually, before we jump in, take a quick second right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more deep dives. Okay, so today, we're exploring something incredibly powerful. I mean, we all know that universal, agonizing sting of making a mistake, right? The crush of a social rejection, the burn of a professional failure, or the heartache of a misaligned romance. It stings, it really does. But what if I told you that error and mismatch aren't just unfortunate accidents? What if they're actually the primary sensors of human development? Today, we're going to learn exactly how to metabolize regret and disappointment into pure orientation. Let's get into it.
Here is what we're covering in today's explainer. First, we'll look at the pain of mistakes. Second, getting data instead of drama. Third, we'll go through a 5-step framework to metabolize error. And finally, we'll look at a real-world example with Amina's relationship X-ray.
All right, Section 1, the pain of mistakes.
So when we bump into the limits of our understanding, it hurts, obviously. But here's the thing, negative feedback is actually nature's debugging tool. It doesn't just tell us that something is off, it gives us the absolute contrast we need to see ourselves clearly. Think about a toxic workplace, a manipulative friend, or a bad romance. These are all mirrors. Yes, okay, they're mirrors with terrible, unflattering lighting, but they're mirrors nonetheless. They reflect back vital information about who we really are. And there's a massive, profound psychological distinction we need to make right now. The trouble is, most of us interpret negative feedback as a personal indictment rather than useful information. Saying, "I was wrong," is just a map correction. It means, hey, you took a left when you should have taken a right, and now you just adjust your route. No big deal. But saying, "I am wrong," that's self-condemnation. It's toxic. The moment we stop taking negative feedback personally, it transforms into a compass. It literally stops being this heavyweight pulling you down and starts pointing you away from what drains you and directly toward what resonates with who you're becoming.
And this brings us to a really beautiful paradox, the mistuned experience. Think of your life as a long, messy improvisation, not some perfect symphony that's already been scored. You simply cannot know which notes will harmonize until you hit a few that fiercely clash. These clashing, dissonant moments, the betrayals, the awkward silences, the failed ventures, they are the tuning fork for your discernment. They are absolutely essential for your psyche to develop its ear and figure out where your own rhythm actually lies.
Moving on to Section 2, data instead of drama. If we accept that life is just one big calibration process, we have to completely change how we react to dissonance. We need to shift away from feeling like a victim of circumstance and become, well, a curious investigator in our own laboratory. Every disappointment, every conflict, it essentially hands you a small, incredibly valuable diagnostic report about yourself. Just think about these internal diagnostic reports for a second. When a relationship or a job goes sideways, your body and mind are constantly generating raw data. You start noticing things like, man, this dynamic drains me, or that boundary's way too porous, or this version of myself just doesn't thrive here. You start fine-tuning your internal compass through this lived dissonance. Honestly, without these messy, uncomfortable moments, your self-knowledge remains entirely theoretical. It's untested. By paying attention, you're turning negative feedback into pure, actionable data.
And that leads us to a pretty hard truth. Discernment requires exposure to contrast. Look, the mistake we all make is wishing we could just skip the discomfort. I mean, we all wish discernment was a skill we could just easily download from the internet, right? But wisdom does not come from a smooth life. The wrong relationship reveals the exact anatomy of compatibility for you. That suffocating workplace, it clarifies what creative autonomy really means for you. Every single misstep is an education in texture. It's those negative loops that refine your model of self.
Okay, Section 3, 5 steps to metabolize error.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to turn this high-level philosophy into practical alchemy. Because how do you actually process these mistuned experiences so they become guidance instead of just toxic residue? Well, we have a progressive methodology to metabolize error. It's designed to move you from a passive sufferer reacting with, "Oh, why me?" to an active investigator asking, "Okay, what is this showing me?" Here is the full 5-step framework. Step 1 is simply pause. Before you go labeling something as bad or toxic, just pause. Those labels might be emotionally accurate, but they're cognitively useless. Instead, tell yourself, this is data. Step 2 is identify the mismatch. Step 3 is extract the learning and drop the bitterness. Step 4 is update your relational model. And step 5 is gratitude. Let's look a little closer at a few of the most critical steps in this progression.
So, the crucial point is right here in step 2, identifying the mismatch. We get so caught up in the pain of a situation, but pain is just the smoke alarm. The mismatch is the actual fire. You have to look past the immediate hurt and ask yourself the deep questions. What core value of mine got violated here? What assumption did this situation expose as completely false? What red flags did I totally ignore before things went sideways? Just asking these questions instantly reframes you into an active learner.
Then we get to step 3, and this is where the real magic happens. You must extract the learning and discard the bitterness. So many people hold on to the emotional charge as some sort of proof that they were wronged. But holding on to that resentment, it just keeps the lesson radioactive. You want to strip the emotional, radioactive energy from the memory and keep only the raw information. Think of this core rule. You want to download the valuable file, but you absolutely must delete the virus.
Section 4, Amina's relationship X-ray.
Let's actually see this alchemy in action. We're going to use a relationship case study, since, let's be real, that's often where feedback stings the most, but it also teaches us the most. We're going to look at Amina's relationship X-ray to see how she applied this exact 5-step framework to a very painful personal experience. Let's track how this builds over time. So, Amina starts dating a guy who's charming, confident, magnetic. Early on, she feels super energized. But as the months pass, she notices these ignored frictions. He interrupts her, he dismisses her ideas, telling her she's overthinking. And she just shrugs it off to preserve harmony. Well, more months pass, and she literally starts to shrink. Finally, there's a messy confrontation. He accuses her of being too intense, and she walks away feeling like a total failure. Now, this is the crash where most people stay stuck. But Amina? She begins to metabolize the pain. And this brilliantly illustrates what she found when she paused and identified the mismatch. It wasn't about who was right or who was the quote-unquote villain. It was a fundamental misalignment of core values. There is a stark contrast here. Amina values mutual curiosity and psychological safety, while her partner valued dominance and certainty. By looking at this as an X-ray, Amina realizes that the pain wasn't proof that she was too intense. No way. It was just proof that their values were entirely misaligned from the start. Because Amina extracted the learning without keeping that radioactive bitterness, she could successfully update her relational model. Listen to her new relational updates. Going forward, she uses bodily check-ins as her radar. She asks herself, does a conversation leave me energized or diminished? She commits to voicing her boundaries much earlier. And crucially, she realizes her past need to preserve harmony over honesty costs her clarity. So from now on, she will trust her intuition. She actually reaches a genuine point of gratitude. She appreciates the relationship not for what it gave her emotionally, but for the profound clarity it provided informationally. She successfully turned her pain into pattern recognition, and that pattern recognition became true discernment.
Bringing us to our final point, disappointment as true alignment.
The exact same logic Amina used applies to jobs, friendships, and creative projects. Every single wrong fit experience in your life is simply an X-ray of your own assumptions and thresholds. And that's the beautiful paradox of the human experience. Disappointment is often the most precise teacher of alignment you will ever encounter. It's how your soul calibrates its compass through the raw friction of the real world. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative question to consider today. What is your most recent failure trying to teach you about how you move through the world? I challenge you to stop treating your life like a courtroom where you're constantly judging yourself and start treating it like a feedback-rich laboratory. Download the file, delete the virus, and let your mistuned experiences finally tune your life.
Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer on the For the Wise podcast. I really hope this framework helps you metabolize your next misstep with curiosity instead of condemnation. If you found this valuable, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really helps us bring more of these deep dives to focused learners just like you. Until next time, stay wise and keep learning.